said, Lord, help me. Show me what to do. That's when he spoke to me. And that's when I heard you need to go to Rema.
So Pastor Andy, you're in Tulsa and everything now, and the finances may not necessarily be there. Can you take us through that part of the journey?
I began to attend the orientation classes for Rema. They now informed me that we're not allowed to work. I had exactly $8 left in my account. I felt the Lord speak to my heart and tell me, just write $8 and finish the account. After the service, on my way out of church, one woman walks up to me and then she shakes my hand and leaves God in my hand. So I opened my hand and it was
Greater. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Greater Than Podcast. My name's Elijah Merle, and I am so honored and blessed you taking out time to join us today. Wherever you find yourself in the world, God is doing good things, and He's doing it in your life. And today we have the honor and privilege of having Pastor Andy Osakwe here to minister and to just tell his story and his testimony. That's what I love about this podcast, is hearing different stories of people overcoming. That greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. That's why it's called Greater Than Podcast. And so I'm so excited about it today. Pastor Andy, how are you, sir?
I am fine, and it's an honor to be here at your platform and, just be with God's people and, just celebrate the goodness of God. So it's a great,
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Oh, so wonderful. Yes, sir. So Pastor Andy is just phenomenal minister of the Word of God. He and his lovely wife have Summit Bible Church, and just a beautiful, beautiful ministry. And so I want him to kind of just tell his testimony and get into it. So Pastor Andy, we'll just jump right on in. Let's start here, because I know people could tell, maybe by me saying your last name and also by hearing your accent, that you're not necessarily from America, right? So can you tell us where you're from and where you were raised, if you give us a little insight into that?
Yes, I'm from Nigeria. That's in West Africa. And I was raised in Nigeria, actually. Most of my, as a young person, as a child, as a teenager, I went to school in Nigeria. I went to college, university in Nigeria as well. Studied medicine. All right. I studied medicine and I practiced for about 6 years before I left to go into full-time ministry. All right. And that was when I sensed a call. The call became so strong, I had to make a choice between my medical practice or going all the way with God in this context. And so that's how I ended up going to Rema Bible Training Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that was 1996. All right, and that just began a whole new journey for me, a journey in ministry. And that's where we are till today. Finished Rema in 1998. When I used to go to Rema, it was a 2-year school. So we finished, yes, my wife and I went to Rema, and we finished 1998. Then we went back to Nigeria the same year and started a church, all right, Summit Bible Church. November 1st, 1998 was when we started. And it's since then we've had, it's grown, and we have several branches and outreaches in Nigeria, in Africa, and also different parts of the world. So it's been an interesting journey. Yes.
Yes, sir. Oh, it's a blessing. Yes, sir. I love hearing it. Just a great testimony. And Pastor Andy, let's go into this. So you're going to be a doctor, and practicing medicine, things of that nature. So what was it about that profession that made you want to even go and think about that? The Lord changed your direction, but just to back up there, what was it about that in particular that made you want to pursue it?
Well, this is something that goes back beyond myself, because I believe my dad was a doctor. All right. Well, he was actually a dentist, and he studied in the U.S. Many years ago. And so he always wanted his firstborn son to be a medical doctor. All right. Back in Africa, especially in West Africa, Nigeria, education is very important. All right. So you have, your parents would would, let me use the word persuade you, all right, to,
Yeah.
to, to go in a certain direction. Yeah. So most of, at least that generation of our parents, most of their children either studied law or medicine or maybe something like maybe accountancy or engineering
Mm-hmm.
professional courses. Yeah. So that's how mine started. Mine started because my dad I already had the atmosphere of the medical sciences, and so my dad wanted me to study medicine. Right. And so that's really how I ended up going into medical college, medical school, yes.
Well, no, I love the background. I love the story of it, and I find it so wonderful and interesting. But let's get into this. So, when did this transition come? When did you feel this pull and this tug from the Lord? Like, hey, this is not it. This is not the direction I have for you. What was that like for you, Pastor Andy?
Well, what happened was, when I went to medical school, um, towards the end of my course, right? I just about finished. I had a few exams left I needed to take. And that's when I really began to sense a vacuum. All right.
Mm,
I had sensed a vacuum, previously, but it now really got really strong. All right.
mm,
And I had a strong, I knew something was missing in my life. All right. I mean,
mm,
I grew up, we grew up in a religious home,
mm-hmm.
religious home. We were Catholics, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that was the vacuum that I had in my heart. I didn't know what it was, but I kind of sensed that I needed to really connect with God on a personal level, And so I remember one time I was lying down on my bed and I looked out of the window, I was alone. And I just felt
Mm-hmm.
that sense of emptiness on the inside. And I looked
Mm,
out of the window and I felt the presence of God. I did not know it was the presence of God, but I knew it had to do with God. Something God was reaching out to me. So I felt that, that presence come, come on me, right? And I knew I was supposed to get saved, right? So,
mm,
I remember I left my room and I went into the college campus. I had known some people who used to, the Christians, they used to go to a certain fellowship in school.
mm-hmm.
So I went there because they had tried to reach out to me in the past and it wasn't successful. But now I knew that those guys had the solution. So I went back into campus and I began to look for them. I found one of them and I said, listen, I want to get saved. Tell me what to do. And, she initially didn't, I mean, I don't think she believed I was really serious about it, but I think when she saw my eyes and saw this guy really wants to get saved, you know,
Mm.
she sat down somewhere and took me through some scriptures and then led me to Christ. All right.
Wow.
And, ever since, the amazing thing is this, as soon as I gave my life to Christ, I began to sense a call to preach the gospel.
Mm,
It was really strange. It was as soon as I gave my life to Christ, I just knew that I was supposed to preach the gospel. So when I would go to the fellowships and, I'd watch the people preaching, I just knew in my heart I was supposed to do that. Right.
wow.
And so it began to have a conflict from that moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just went on and I finished, my exams, did they call it internship, the housemanship. And then, that's for 1 year. Then I went and, began to, work. I was working in a hospital. I was
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to go and specialize, in medicine. You do your first general, course, and then you have
Mm-hmm.
to specialize in any branch, specialty. Yeah. So, and of course, my parents were always in the background,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
they had a lot of expectations, right? They expected me to go ahead and, specialize in one of the fields. My dad particularly wanted me to specialize in internal medicine, right?
Mm,
So all that went on. So I was basically a general practitioner at that time, all right?
mm-hmm.
Getting ready to go and specialize. And then the calling got so strong. It got so strong. I just had this strong sense of a call. I remember walking into the hospital one day because the guy who owned the hospital was my friend, right? He was a businessman. He owned the hospital. And then, so we had a good relationship. I was bringing him money, you could say. So, so we had a good relationship. He was a businessman. I was a medical doctor. We came together, and then, we were doing this hospital. And so I remember walking to the hospital one day, and I just knew I could not continue. I just knew this is not going to help me. And I had to walk up to him and tell him, listen, I have to leave. And he couldn't understand it because he wasn't really saved, and he just didn't understand when I said the Lord was dealing with me, and I had a strong sense that I was meant to stop this and face the calling of God. It didn't quite make sense to him, so I had to leave that day, I had to leave, and that was how they turn around. That was a turnaround point, right?
Yes, sir.
Pivotal point, yeah. So at that point I began to, and just about that time was when the Lord, began to speak to me about going to Rema. Right. So, it's funny because just when that happened, I left the hospital, I went back home. I felt so confused when I got back home because what am I going to do now? So I remember that I actually began to cry. I was crying out of frustration. Yeah. I just sat there, just crying. And then, I cried and I cried and I cried. And when I finished crying, I got a revelation from God. And the revelation is that nothing changes because you cried. except that you get dehydrated, and you get so finished crying, nothing changed. I was still the same, still the same confused and frustrated person. Then I now prayed. I said, Lord, help me. Show me what to do. That's when he spoke to me. Right. And that's when I heard you need to go to Rema. Right. And I was like, wow, Rema. I knew about Rema because I used to read books by Kenneth Hagin. Right. And at the back of the book, they'd have that picture of the Rema campus at the back. Right. And some other information. So I just knew what he meant about, Bible school and going to Rema. And so that's how it started, right? I, began to make inquiries, and supernaturally within 6 months, I was in Rema with my wife and then my kids. Yeah. So that's great. That's a summary.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, that's great. No, I love the story. I love hearing different people's stories and how the Lord moved and worked in their lives. So Pastor Andy, take us into this. So you're moving now. You're in Tulsa and everything now.
Yeah.
Now you're moving away from and leaving a profession that's pretty good, in terms of money and finances and everything.
Yeah.
So, what was this like? You're not only are you a husband, you're a father, right? And so you're moving everyone away, and the finances may not necessarily be there. Can you take us through that part of the journey there?
That was, it's one thing to answer the call of God, right? But then, you would think that when you say yes to God, everything is going to become easy now. Yes to God. So, the fulfillment of saying yes to God was just the beginning, because the next phase was tough, right? Because now, okay, God has made a way. We found ourselves in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? I began to, attend the orientation classes for Rema. In those classes, they now informed me that we're not allowed to work. Because, especially back then, there was a certain kind of visa we got to come to Rema. And that visa did not allow us to work. Right. And so I was shocked because I'd come to America and I was hoping I was going to be able to work. I mean, I knew I would not be able to practice medicine because you have to do certain exams. But I felt I could go get some kind of job somewhere, my wife as well. my wife was planning to babysit for some people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to get a job somewhere, whatever job. So that was the plan. So when they now told us, listen, all international students are not allowed to work because of this kind of visa, and that if the international student was caught working, what would happen is the government would deport them, but would also cancel Rema's privilege of bringing students for
Oh,
instance.
wow.
So they actually appealed to us. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm like, wow, because this is not what I thought. I thought I was going to be able to come and then just, get a job. It's still going to be rough, but because I have a family, to take care of. But I didn't think we were going to get stuck in a place where I wasn't able to work, right? And then, so I asked a question, right? And I felt maybe, you know how you ask a question and then you feel maybe I shouldn't have asked that question, you know?
Yeah.
because because I had an agreement with somebody, right? There's somebody in my class an elderly woman, right, who had told me that if I would come and do some work for her in the house, right, maybe like mow the lawn, do a couple of things, she would pay me, and this would be private between us, right? And then also we had the two couples who wanted my wife to take care of the babies. Right, and this were almost like friends, right? And then they'll give us something. So I thought that was okay because it wasn't a regular employment. See, I wasn't going to fill any forms. This is just between us, right? So I just asked that question, with the confidence. I just wanted to get the reassurance that I was, And when I asked the question, the answer I got, I didn't like the answer I got. But, they said, anything you do, any kind of work that you do, that you get in exchange for money is considered employment, even if it's not official, right? And that's how the government sees it. So if the government knows you got paid something, right? And so I said, okay, but even if it's a private arrangement, they said particularly that, because that's what a lot of people do, right? I tell you, man, I left that place sad. I'll be honest with you. I left that place sad because I was like, I wasn't sure what I was going to do.
Sure.
The money that we brought with us was only going to last us 6 months, right? And the school was 2 years. And I had, right? So I really wasn't, and then my wife was pregnant. So our family is expanding, right? I'm not allowed to work. So I got back home and I told my wife, and we just felt, we felt the pressure, and we knew we had to pray about this. And so I prayed about this. I said, Lord, okay, I've left my country. I've come all the way to America. I don't want my family to be hungry or to suffer. So if I've missed you, then I need to know so I can just go back, and just continue, at least maybe I've missed a timing or something,
Yeah.
So I remember praying to God like that, and and the Lord just kept reassuring me that I am right where He wants me to be right now, right? So I asked the Lord, okay, what do I do? The Lord said to me, well, you're not allowed to work to get paid, right, by the government, by anybody, but you can work as a volunteer, right, and I will pay you. That's what the Lord said. He will pay me, right? So what I did was I went to Rema and I found out all the available spaces where I could work, right? I had like 3 different places I was working. I was working with shipping and receiving. Then I'd work with a prayer, they had a prayer group that would meet at certain time. I volunteered in different places, right? And I began to trust God. And that's when the Lord began to move. That's when we began to see the hand of God in a way I probably would not have seen, right? If I didn't have to go through that particular journey, right? I began to understand that the whole idea was God wanted to teach me, not just by precept, but by practice, the lifestyle of faith. Because we had to live by faith to eat.
Yes, sir.
We had to live by faith to pay school fees. We had to live by faith to, take care of business, take care of all things, right? So we had to learn. We had to learn. So as I would go to the classes, I would hear the teaching. For me, it wasn't just a lecture, right? For me, it was survival. We had to survive
Wow.
this phase. So whatever I heard in class, I knew I was going to have to put it to practice immediately, right?
Mm.
And one of the first things I remember, one of my first classes, actually, my first class in Rema was by Keith Moore, Brother Keith Moore.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That class was called, back then it was called Giving and Receiving, right? So it was just about how to, walk the life of prosperity. And that's what I needed. That's
Yes.
exactly what I needed. So I would just go to class and I began to look at the subject of tithing all afresh, because now I needed something to happen, so for me, it wasn't just, it wasn't just a tithing. I needed, this thing has to work now, right? So I looked at, giving and how to give led by the Spirit and all that. And I just paid attention because I knew this was a make or break moment for me. Right.
Wow.
And I remember we just began to give. I have so many stories about giving and how God supernaturally would supply our needs. Amazing things began to happen. I remember just one of those stories. December, I believe it was December 8th, 1996. Right, December 8th, 1996, a Sunday morning, right? And I had exactly $8 left in my account, right? That's about 6 after school starts, right? So money's going down. I'm working and doing all kinds of work. The money's going down, right? Get to December 8th, and I have just about $8. Actually, $8 exactly is what I had in my account, right? And I remember going to church, and for some reason I took my checkbook, right? So I went to church, and back then in church in Rema, they used to have praise and worship was in 2 parts, all right? The first part, then there would be, the offering would be collected, right? Then you have the second part of praise and worship, all right? So I was there, we were praising God. Then it got to the part where the offering was to be collected, right? I felt the Lord speak to my heart and tell me, just write $8 and finish the account. Give the left, because that $8 isn't going to do you any good anyway. And the truth is, isn't it amazing how you can have just a little money left, and yet because it's the last thing you have, you can fight to hold on to it.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the money is not going to help you. It's not going to fix anything.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the widow of Zarephath, who had just a little meal left, her last meal. And she made a very profound statement. She said, you know what? When the prophet asked her about her situation, she said, me and my son were going to eat this last meal and die. Right? So really, I feel like people didn't quite get that message. If you eat your seed, then you die.
Wow.
There's nothing else. There's no harvest because you ate your seed, And that's, so I knew that God was telling me, just go ahead and give this seed, because you can't even, it's not going to help you anyway. But there's something that happens when you do that. So I did it. The offering basket came by, and I wrote a check before it got to me, and I put in my last money, $8 in the account, in the basket. And I'll be honest with you, man. Listen, I watched the basket go, man. I watched the basket go, and in my mind I thought, there goes my box. In other words, it's gone, right? Then I had to quickly, because I remembered Brother Moore speaking about the cheerful giver.
Yeah.
I remember, because that's a class, I'm doing that class, and those things are still right. So what I did was I just broke out in praise and worship. I just began to worship God, and I just I made sure that I didn't get depressed. I resisted that depression and frustration and fear, and I just began to worship God. And as I worshiped God, I just forgot about it. I mean, it just went off my mind. When the service began, it was off my mind, strange, and I just enjoyed the service. After the service, on my way out of church, one woman walks up to me, right? And then she shakes my hand and leaves paper in my hand, right? We call it the Pentecostal handshake.
That's right.
So I opened my hand and it was $200.
Wow.
Just like $200. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is working. I get back home and my wife tells me, one of her friends, old time friends, called and told her that, she doesn't have much at this time, but that she just sent Sinead to give us what she had, right? I remember it was like $36.40, something like that, And she said she felt a bit uncomfortable because she was like, you guys, I'm just going to send you little amount of money like that. She felt we might be offended, But we're not offended. No. Even $1 would have been wonderful at that time, So
yes.
so we received it, and then she sent it on Monday, and then that same Monday, right? I was in the classroom, and then the dean back then, the dean was his name was Gary Crow, right? The dean came and made an announcement, right? Now he didn't quite know how to pronounce my last name. Last name. So he said, "Will Mr. Andrew Osakwe come and see me?" I'll never forget it. Come and see me after the class, I mean, he made me into a Japanese man. I became Japanese
yes.
So I went to see him after school, and he told me that the Lord spoke to him that morning and told him to pay our school fees.
Oh, wow.
For me and my wife. That's amazing, So I'm like, wow. And then he told me also that the Lord also instructed them. So he had a gift card, right, of $200, a $200 gift card from the school, right, and another one from the church. So that was $400. He gave me two of those gift cards and says, they also felt led to do this. So now I'm like, wow. So I have my fees are paid, and then I have these two cards, So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I actually, I went home to my wife and told her, we're so excited, we're so excited. And I decided to go and buy a thank you card, just to say thank you. So I wrote something just to express our appreciation. Wrote something on a card. Then I went back to the school before office hours were closed. I went back to give him the card. So when I got there, I couldn't see him because he was busy. So I left it with the secretary. And so the secretary takes it in, and I'm leaving. I began to leave, right? So as I'm leaving, then I heard the secretary call me. I said, come back. And then, so I came back, and then she says, the dean would like to see you, right? So I just walked into the dean's office, and he told me this. He said, that afternoon at the prayer school, as they prayed, they were led to collect money for 2 international students, right? So they collected $600, right? And so he had the money with him, but was now praying to God as to who to give it to. It was that moment that my card just slipped in. And the Lord said, give it, So that's how he gave me another $300 in just one day. By the end of that week, we had about $2,750
Wow.
out of nothing, right? And that's
Yeah.
how everything just began to escalate.
Mm.
We began to see the hand of God. It was like we had hit a breakthrough moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just the harvest of our seeds and, just God's faithfulness. And that was how we went through 2 years. And it was
Mm.
supernatural. Every supply was supernatural for 2 years, so,
Mm.
and like I said, I feel that was God's way of teaching me, uh, faith, so that
Yes.
everything I do now in ministry is based on those 2 years, what I learned.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
What I learned in 2 years. It's amazing.
Wow. That is amazing. It's like
Yeah.
this, like I say, it was survival for you guys. It
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't theory. It wasn't
Yeah.
conjecture. It was like,
Yeah.
are we going to live
Yeah.
through the day,
Yeah.
through the year?
So,
It was a whole different ball
yeah.
game for you guys, and God
Yeah.
came through faithfully.
Yeah.
And so this is why, and I'll encourage the listeners as you guys are watching this. This is a reason. This is somebody you want to listen to. You
Oh.
want to listen to somebody who had to walk through it. This isn't somebody who just, overnight sensation type deal, people that trend on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. No, this is somebody that had to live by faith to see his whole family get the next meal. And so this is the type of people you want to learn from. And then what I think is in Hebrews, right, talks about whose faith follows. And you
Yeah.
want to follow that kind of faith, and that's the important thing. So Pastor Andy, take us into going back to Nigeria, going back to start the church. Can you take us through that process and that walk of faith?
Okay, I'm going to have to summarize a lot because that's huge, man. A lot of things, right? But first of all, something happened just as I was about to finish school. I got an offer from a well-established church, right? I worked with them a little while before we left. Okay, so they wanted to start planting churches in North America. So because I had worked with them, and they also knew I'd gone through Rema, so they felt I had kind of understood the system as well. They approached me and told me that they would like me to move to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And plant a church there. And then from there, so we'll start to plant churches all around. And they were going to fund it. They were going to bring funds. They're going to take care of my housing, accommodation, my children's school fees, right?
Oh, wow.
Get us whatever we needed until the church was able to stand on its own, right? That was such a great offer,
Yes.
It was a great offer, all right? So, so I was excited, I was excited. Told my wife, she was excited, and we're just getting ready to go to Washington, D.C., But, the excitement was only surface deep. I never could get my spirit man to get excited.
Oh,
So
wow.
I knew something wasn't right. It was just on the surface, after, you tell people, I say, wow, look what the Lord has done, blah, blah, blah. And you go back home and you pray, you just know this is not God's will. This is not God. I could not generate excitement with my inner man. I couldn't,
Yeah, yes. Oh.
At that point, I knew, and my wife felt the same as well, So we began to pray, and the Lord spoke to me clearly. It says, you need to go back to Nigeria and start a walk in Nigeria, and gave me the city, it was very specific, and
Yes, sir.
yeah, and I was in the classroom, and Kenneth E. Hagin was teaching about the same, all right? And as he was teaching, for the first time, I felt what I know now to be grace. The grace of God dropped on me, right? To pastor a church. Up till that time, I never saw myself pastoring a church. I saw myself, traveling and teaching, but never really to pastor a church, But when that thing dropped on me, I knew it was the grace of God to pastor a church. And as soon as that grace came on me, I got a name for the church in my spirit. I heard in my spirit, Summit. And so I began to pray about it, and God began to show me more details, right? And the need to get back to Nigeria, to start this work right there in Nigeria. And so that's how we ended up, I had to call the church, and I had to explain myself to them, and let them know that, I really would have loved to, but I really said, God has another plan for me. All right. And so that's how we ended up in Nigeria. And we started to walk. Wow. We started to walk from our living room. We got a place to stay. Then we just started from our living room, right? And it was a house that was built by somebody, right? And we didn't have enough money to pay for that house. Don't forget, we've run out of resources. We didn't have enough money to pay for that house. So what she was asking for rent for 2 years, in America, you pay every month. In Africa, you pay for 2 years in advance.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had money just for 1 year, right? But she needed, usually when you sign an agreement, it's for 2 years, right? So what we had was only enough for 1 year. So she wanted 2 years, and we didn't have the money, right? And I was asking her to take that money for 2 years, the money we had, right? I told her I wanted to use that money for 2 years, and she says that money is only enough for 1 year. You understand? So I said, okay, I'm so sorry. She said, sorry, she can't do it for us, right? So I'm about to walk out of her office, this lady. And then she asked me, she says, what do you do? I said to her, I'm a pastor. I'm about to start a church. She went, oh. She said to me, now, if she doesn't give me this place, she's going to have to explain to God why. So she asked me to come back, and she signed the lease and gave me for 2 years without pay. And so that's how we're able to move into this place, right? And I knew that somehow God's going to use this place to help us establish this work. So we just began to have services on Sundays. We just, sent out some flyers, began to have services right there in the living room, and then, one thing led to another. Next thing, we outgrew the living room. So there was some space around the house outside. So we could go outside, build something like, like 4 or 5, 6 wooden pillars, and then like asbestos zinc above. And we just began to do that. And then, one thing led to another. And then it was just step by step by step by step.
Yeah.
And amazing. God has done amazing things.
Oh, so good. I love these testimonies. Just so powerful. And these different things. I want to come back here, Pastor Andy, here to this opportunity that pops up, before you guys go out here. Something happened to me similar to that. When I was stepping out into ministry, there was a church that wanted me to join. This has happened more than once. This is a couple, because people might be listening, like, are you talking about me? Well, it's happened more than once. So I'm not, don't get offended. So anyway, so I got a preference by saying that. So, but anyway, this opportunity comes, but just in my heart, just didn't feel right and didn't set right. And then I had the opportunity to preach after my spiritual father in a place called Jonesboro, Arkansas. And the pastor that had invited me, associate pastor, like executive pastor, he comes up to me afterwards, and before my session, and we're having lunch. And he looks across the table. He says, the reason I invited you, he said to me, Elijah, is because you're pioneering something. He said, a lot of people that are your age, they want to go to something that's already established and then get their pay, get on salary, right? Then they're good to go. They don't have to think about anything. He said, but I invited you because you were pioneering something. And I just thought that was powerful. But that doesn't happen if I take that opportunity. That wasn't, it might seem like a good opportunity, but it was not a God opportunity. It wasn't God speaking and revealing. So what would you say to people that maybe they have a great opportunity, but something on the inside is just not quite there with that? What would you say? And I don't want to scroll past that. I think that's powerful.
Yes, yes. I think it's important to not allow an opportunity that it might look good. Like you said, there's a difference between good and God, all right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter how attractive it looks, um, we want to know that we're right in the center of the will of God.
Yes.
And you don't want to force yourself, right, to do something against the will of God. It reminds me of when Jesus spoke to Paul on his way to Damascus. He said, "It is hard for you to kick against the goats." In other words, you're going
Mm.
against the will of God, and it's hard, right? And it might seem okay in the flesh, but it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
hard on your spirit. It's going to be hard on your
Mm.
spirit because you're going to wake up and you're going to have to keep on going, but you know deep inside, this is not it, right? You don't want to do that just because maybe you're going to get some benefits,
Yeah.
some
Mm-hmm.
financial benefits or maybe some other conveniences. You want to know that your spirit man is at rest in the will of God,
Mm.
right? And looking back now, I can see how I would have had problems if I'd gone
Mm-hmm.
that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It looked okay at that time. Everything seemed okay, but looking back now, all right, I see how I would have had so many problems in that
Mm.
particular system trying to build this thing,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to coming here and starting from scratch, right? And
Mm-hmm.
allowing God to be the one to bring increase. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
And all the lessons I've had to learn just because I decided to do it God's way. The lessons that you learn that you can't learn when you're leaning on something or somebody else as your
Mm-hmm.
as source. Bottom line, as your
Mm-hmm.
source. So the lessons you learn in the will of God, which position you for destiny.
Mm.
So I look back now and I'm so happy. I'm like, Lord, I thank you that I had enough fortitude to actually refuse a good offer, very good
Mm-hmm.
offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And decide to go and start from the scratch and go through the pains of starting something from the scratch, right?
Yes.
But there was grace. There's grace there. You see,
Mm.
there was grace. I mean, we started from the scratch, but there was grace, right?
Exactly.
If I had gone that other route, I would have gone away from His grace. You know,
Mm.
I remember Brother Moore preached a message about graces and places.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and he spoke about when you're running the right race, then you'll tap into your grace. So when you
Mm-hmm.
run your race, then you'll tap into your grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that when you run another race, you're going to miss out on your grace. You
Yes,
see?
sir.
So I think I'd like to advise anyone, don't take an offer just because it sounds good. Not
Mm-hmm.
every opportunity is from God. You know,
Mm-hmm.
God does not lead us by open doors. God leads us
Mm.
by Spirit. As many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. All right. So, if a door opens, you want to go and check first. You want to go and
That's
check
good.
first. You want to check first. And, I remember, that time when this was happening, and
Mm-hmm.
I began to sense that God wanted us to go back to Nigeria. I used to serve, there's a ministry that used to have their meetings on Monday nights, and I used to go and help out, And
Mm-hmm.
I remember they had invited a man of God from another state,
Mm-hmm.
like a prophet, And so
Mm-hmm.
he had come, and I remember because I was an usher in this other ministry, I ushered for them, and I was at the back of the auditorium, and this man of God was invited, and when he got in there, he looked at me, pointed at me, and asked me to come down, right? And when I came
Mm-hmm.
down, he said to me, I don't know who you are, but I keep hearing the words Nigeria, Nigeria, Nigeria. In other words, whatever you have to do, you have to go back to Nigeria. You have an assignment to do, right? And this
Wow.
was, God just confirming, confirmation, because I began to, when you make a decision to follow the will of God, then He starts to send you confirmation, right? And to confirm what the Lord has put in your heart already, and that's what happened. So I began to have a lot of experiences like that. And we we paid the price, but it was worth it because the grace was there,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's so good, Pastor Andy. Thank you, sir.
Praise
So
God.
much wisdom. Just so wonderful here. As we begin to wrap this up, Pastor Andy, he's a busy man. We don't want to hold him too long. But as we begin to wrap this up, sir, as I've said in the beginning of the episode, the purpose of this episode, the podcast, is that verse, 1 John 4:4, greater is he that is in you than
Amen.
he that is in the world.
Amen.
Pastor Andy, when you hear that verse, what comes up
Yep.
to your heart and mind? Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Well, what do you see there?
What I see, personally, is I had an experience some years ago, right? I come from a family, my extended family in my town. You have the town and you have the village. So my village, they have the witch doctors are from my village. So in my village, you have those who do the sorcery and all that kind of stuff. So when I got born again, it was as if the evil kingdom had lost somebody, because I was supposed to follow a certain line, right? So there was a lot of attacks. I began to have a lot of spiritual contention, and I remember having an experience where someone had taught me about Matthew 28, verse 18, where the Bible says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go in my name. Or in other words, delegates the authority to us. And the Lord showed me that scripture when it says all authority, And so through this man of God who was explaining the scripture to me, he said, what does all mean in your village? And I said, all means everything. He said, if that's the case, then if all authority was given to us, then which authority does the devil have? It came on like a light bulb. I saw it, right? So I used to be very afraid. I used to be very scared. I used to be very scared of, demonic attacks. I had all kinds of attacks, demonic spirits, And so when I saw that, I got it, And so, I was able to develop my confidence in the greater one inside. And I got to a point where the fear that I used to have for evil spirits, that fear went, because I began to build a consciousness of the greater one on the inside. He's so much greater than the enemy on the outside. And so fear is the enemy's access, all right, fear. So when we conquer fear through that kind of consciousness, then the enemy has no way to bring his will to pass anymore. You see, he can make a lot of noise, but as long as you to be afraid, he has no access, right?
Wow.
And the confidence that you need to get over the fear is what you just said now. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in this world. The greater one lives on the inside of us. So we have no reason to be afraid. We just need to build our consciousness around the greater one on the inside. That's the key. That's a powerful key.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Man, I know you guys have been blessed listening to this and encouraged by it. Pastor Andy, what's the way for people to see what you guys are doing, get resources, all of this good stuff?
Oh, okay. We have, I'm on social media, right? So they can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's at Dr. Andy Osakwe.
Yes, sir.
At Dr. Andy Osakwe. or they can also, where our website, the church website is Summit Bible Church. They can put Summit Bible Church Abuja. Even though we're starting a branch here in Katy, in Texas here. I'm actually right now, because we're starting a branch. But our main church is Summit Bible Church Abuja. And also I have a personal ministry, which is Andrew Osakwe Ministries International. So they can check us through any of those on social media. And if you go on social media, you'll find our link to our website as well.
No, that's awesome. So great. Guys, you check it out. Avail yourselves to these materials. Like I said, you want to hear from somebody who's done it, somebody who's had to walk through some things. You don't want to just follow anybody. You want to follow faith, is what the scripture says. And so this is a ministry that has operated and lived on faith, learned it. And at Rhema, those 2 years have been their life by living and walking by faith. And it's just a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Pastor Andy, for being on, sir. Appreciate you, sir. And so thankful to have you in my life. I appreciate you. Yes, sir.
You.
Such a powerful ministry.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on your platform. I really appreciate it, and I hope I've been able to just add a little bit of encouragement to your viewers. We live in the last days, and I believe that
that's right.
Believers need to get back to the subject of faith. I really believe that.
Yes, they do.
And I see that in you as well. I see that in you. I see how you're living your life. I see how, like that pastor says, you're pioneering. It takes faith to pioneer like you're doing. You know?
Sir.
I want to just encourage you, keep up the good work. God's grace will continue to multiply on your life, and He'll continue to open doors for you and take you places. In Jesus' name.
Thank you, sir. Praise the Lord. I receive it. Thank you, sir. And thank you guys for watching and being a part. My name's Elijah Merle. I don't want you to forget this now. Greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world.